Hey, this is 151. Who wants to start talking first? Because I got to mute myself. I get yelled at if I don't mute.
You can start, Rick.
All right. So, I mean, there's only one thing to talk about, which is the fucking coronavirus. Last week I said we'd have 22,000 American fatalities when we get together again this week, and we do have that many fatalities. Though the overall number of fatalities estimated has been lowered from as many as 240,000 to as few as 61,000 when all this is done with. Because America's been doing really good at sheltering in place. But that may not include the South, particularly Florida and the rest of the Civil War states. So there may be a second. Anyway, it's been a terrible week. Next week will probably be about as terrible, with 35,000 fatalities by the time we meet up again. Every one of these people was, well, I'm sure there's some assholes in there. You can't have tens of thousands of dead without some people nobody's going to miss. But most of these people are loved with full lives and, the whole fucking deal. They're just not numbers. All right, that's what I got.
Okay. So we're now into our, fourth week almost of lockdown, and the Democrats running the state in their infinite paternalism. Now, paternalism means when the government or anybody decides to act like your parents because you're not able to take care of yourself. They've decided that they're going to keep the state closed until at least May the 15th, another over a month from now. So if there was any possibility of avoiding depression in the economy, the Democrats want to make sure that they destroy California's economy. Had they opened it to tomorrow, the state might have been able to recover, but they want to make sure that it's completely destroyed. I see no way that the California economy is going to bounce back after what they've done to it. The curve in the state of California has flattened. So we have under 1,000 deaths. I think we have 650 deaths in a state of 40 million people.
681 deaths.
Rick, that's really not necessary. I mean, I said around 650. That's adequate precision. Now, the thing to me is that we now have enough data. I'm looking at a chart right now, so I can be exactly to the number to please Rick, that there are countries out there that have no lockdown, and they're doing okay. Japan has no lockdown, and they're doing fine. They have about they have under 200 deaths. Now, we would have gotten a lot more because we already got hit. But another country is Sweden. And one of the things they're doing is they are comparing Sweden to their neighbors, Finland, Denmark, and Norway. It turns out that they have quite a few more deaths than Finland, Norway, and Denmark, but they still have under 900 deaths, and they have virtually no lockdown whatsoever. And those 900 deaths could possibly be explained by the fact that Sweden has the most immigrants of any of those countries. That is, immigrants from Iran, the Middle East, and maybe Italy and China. I don't know, but there may be another explanation. Either way, it's statistically not particularly relevant, because when you're dealing with deaths under 800, it's just, whether it's 800 or 500 or 300, either way, you don't shut down a country with 10 million people in it. So that's what the Democrats have done. They have, and not only, as the numbers have flattened, our curve is flattened in California, meaning that we basically have it under complete and utter control. As the numbers have gotten better in California, the Democrats have actually increased the pressure from their boot on our necks, which is what all totalitarians do. They've imposed more restrictions, not less. So now you can be there are a lot of situations where you have to wear a mask in public, where you can't enter a store without a mask, where all employees of everywhere have to wear a mask if you're working at all. I mean, it is a nightmare. I never imagined, as much as I hate the Democrats, I never imagined that they're worse than I imagined, which I didn't think was possible. So anyway, as Rick cowers in fear in his home, the one I'm going to let him respond to my last point. I can't hear you.
All right, here we go. All right. So Sweden, where they decided not to lock shit down, has 5 times the fatality rate of California. California is doing, and hasn't necessarily flattened the curve, Sweden. A better example of what happens when you don't, at least initially, fucking take action is the UK, which has 9.5 times the fatality rate of California. Because they're governed by a moron, and they just decided to let it spread unabated through the population for a while until they realized that would fuck them. California is the most populous American state, but it's only 5th in the number of cases because we're doing really well at protecting ourselves, and we are among the 9 states with the most cases. We are dead last in the number of deaths per million. So we're doing really well. Life is, I mean, yeah, we've got severe limitations on what we can do, but we can still do some stuff. Carol went and picked up dinner for us in my town, Studio City. There are still about 72 restaurants open for delivery or takeout. 95% of people are in favor of having restrictions because it saves lives, and because California, especially Southern California, is doing so well, we may be able to come out of this sooner than a lot of other places. Florida and the rest of the South are going to turn into hellholes because, in nearly half of the Civil War states, former Confederacy states, they've tested roughly only 0.5% of their population. They don't know who has it. A lot of the governors of the former Confederate states are letting people, have been slow to do shelter in place. And if you look at the fever heat map of America, which is generated by people's temperatures being reported by digital thermometers, the tip of Florida is red hot, the hottest place in the country, which probably means they are going to be the second or they're going to be the next place to have a coronavirus outbreak that threatens to overwhelm hospitals.
All right. So let me just look at what's going on in Florida. I want to verify some things. As far as testing goes, Florida has taken let's see, their number of tests is pretty good. They've taken 185,000 tests, and California has taken 203,000 tests. Now, that number is important because their death rate is actually lower than California's. So they have fewer cases and fewer deaths. Now their population is smaller too, but according to tests per million, total tests, deaths, and number of cases, Florida is not doing all that different from California.
You're looking at old numbers, Florida, and these numbers are.
No, I'm looking at today's numbers.
No, I'm looking at today's numbers too, maybe on a different website. But Florida has a death rate of 22 per million. California, 30% less at 17 per million. Florida has a testing rate of 0.9%, which is roughly the national average, which is still pretty fucking bad. We've tested nationwide. We've tested less than 1% of our population, so we really don't know. We don't know enough about who has it to be able to do anything but mitigate.
Yeah, I was getting it. Did you? Okay. So what I wanted to say is that the numbers on what's happening in Florida can also be evaluated based on how many New Yorkers fled to Florida. So that they actually wanted to quarantine Florida because so many New Yorkers were coming. Now, no argument I make involves New York because New York has got it. I mean, they are just overwhelmed with it. And they were going to Florida and bringing it with them. They were also, they also have a high proportion of elderly people. So that skews things against Florida. But my point is that Florida isn't doing that badly. Now, if you can predict that in a week there'll be a terrible pandemic, that may change things. But my point is that also you mentioned Sweden. It's true that Sweden has, 4 or 5 times the deaths of Norway, but we're talking about Norway having under 200 and Sweden having under 900. So either way, even if it's 4 or 5 times, which seems like a dramatic number, we're still not at a level where you would shut a nation of 10 million down. In other words, Rick, the thing I need you to understand is that you don't shut a country with 10 million down because 900 people are killed. I mean, you could lose that many people in a train accident, or I don't know, there are 100 other ways, 2 plane accidents. My point is that there are also states in the United States, South Dakota, a lot of the Midwest states, Alaska, Texas is going to open up, thank God. So Texas is actually going to open up. But as far as the states in the Midwest, they should not be locked down. and South Dakota never did lock down, and they're fine. They're absolutely fine. So there are now two competing views on what to do in the U.S. There's the Democrat view, which is that we should destroy the economy, which, by the way, I keep mentioning, will cause more deaths than coronavirus. If the country goes into the depression that the Democrats are trying to create, and I think deliberately, we will have more deaths from suicide, drug addiction, alcoholism, the shutting down of factories in Asia that are sending us goods that we can no longer buy. Whole villages depend on us for their livelihood. So besides the fact that there's fairly good evidence, the studies are rather imprecise, but there have been a number of studies that say that every point of unemployment, when it goes from 4 points to 5 points, that represents thousands. One study said 10,000 deaths. So we're going to have deaths, Rick, and I resent the germaphobes and totalitarians for continuing this absurd lockdown. That's number one. Number two, the fact that rich people like yourself can go out and go to restaurants, and I've heard this over and over again from rich people, that they're just so delighted enjoying their free time and in their fine homes and going out, ordering out, having food delivered. I've heard this from all the upper class people. And none of the blue-collar people like myself are talking about that, because our problem is I don't give a fuck whether I can get food from a restaurant that is stayed open or not, or whether I can go play outside or go for a hike with my dog. What I care about is that the Democrats destroyed my business. They destroyed it. My school, I had a thriving school, has been completely shut down by the Democrats, and all of the other poor people I know have been thrown out of work. So I know right now I can name half a dozen of my friends who are as poor as I am. All of us have either lost our jobs or lost whatever business we had. All the self-employed people have been wiped out. So this is not a matter of enjoying your lockdown time, being more spiritual, getting in touch with your partner and your feelings, reading those good books you haven't had time to read. This is a matter of the Democrats destroying all of the blue-collar people that they claim to care so much about. That's the second thing. The last thing I want to say is that
you're accusing me of being rich and living the high life. In the last 8 days or so, we've done takeout twice. Once we split a bowl of yogurt at a yogurt place, from a yogurt place. And tonight, we fucking ordered one entree, spaghetti, in meat sauce, and a Caesar salad, and split that. So it's not like we're fucking living the fucking high life here. But we do feel like, it will make a little bit of an effort to try to patronize local businesses to keep them going.
Okay, we have to make a deal from now. Let's just make a deal. When your microphone is muted, raise your hand so I know when I can speak. Okay. Rick, whether you're rich or not is irrelevant to me. Whether you had yogurt or ice cream or spaghetti is irrelevant to me. My point is that all the people I know that are well off and have savings are fine with their wonderful isolation time. And all the people that have been, that were just getting by and are poor are being wiped out by this. So your quarantine that you're living through will end up having very little effect on you, whereas I may not recover. So, this quarantine's working out fine for you and all the left-wing celebrities that are singing Beatles songs on videos right now. But it's not working out for the people that were going to work every day and have no savings. Do you want to respond, or may I go on?
I'll respond. I'll respond because you think that there's a choice between shutting people doing nothing and people losing their jobs, and then if everything was opened up or opened up to some extent. Now, you can argue for opening shit up to some extent, but you're kind of arguing like throw off all the shackles, I believe, and you think that somehow there'd be no economic consequences for that, whereas the wreckage, the economic devastation of 600,000 Americans dying compared to 80,000 people dying under the current, what we're doing currently, do you think that 8 times as many Americans dying wouldn't have economic consequences? The economic consequences, the chaos and the heartache and the sadness would be, and it would be worse with a bunch more dead people than it would be with us with us being locked down in California. It's now through May 15th, and the sooner we knock it down, the sooner we'll be able to open back up. If you look at the heat map of the nation, Southern California is one of the least disease-ridden places in the nation right now, and we'll be able to open up sooner. Now, as far as the really sparsely populated states like South Dakota, I don't know. I know that 39 states plus the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., have 1,100 cases or more. Roughly half the states in the country have more than 3,000 cases. Can you open a state up that has only 800 cases? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Wyoming, Alaska. Do you just say, just be careful? I can see having relaxed regulations there, where frickin' you just don't gather in groups of everybody still like fucking does the social distancing. I don't know. I know that they've done studies of the pandemic in 1918 and the places that opened up too soon, the Philadelphias, and they had another bigger wave of illness if they didn't get rid of it, or at least get it to the point where they could track it. And actually, they couldn't fucking track. Anyway, we need more testing, and if testing becomes better, because we're still, for the past nearly 3 weeks, the number of tests done per day has stagnated between 100,000 and 150,000 per day. So now we still haven't tested even 1% of the country. If we came up with a test that could give results fast, because some people are waiting as long as 2 weeks for results, but if you had a test where you could test thousands of people in every city a day and get them results within an hour or two, then after the initial shutdown, we might have knocked levels down enough that you could track people via widespread testing programs. But right now, it's probably premature. And it's not like the U.S. is the only fucking nation in the world with draconian shutdown measures. Most of the non-stupid countries in the world are doing some kind of shutdown. Yep. Hold on. Damn it. Hold on.
Okay, so I don't know why you think that Japan and Sweden are stupid countries. They have higher IQs than we do. as nations, and they're doing fine without lockdowns. The At this point, I think that the American people have gotten the idea that they should wash their hands, stay away from grandma, and if necessary, wear a mask. I mean, if we could go back to our jobs, I mean, I'm willing to compromise with the germaphobes and fools and totalitarians, but a complete grinding 1984 Orwellian lockdown doesn't make any sense. It's madness. But the other thing that Rick never wants, and I just wanted to mention, as of this moment, we do have tests, Rick. I know you're busy fact-checking me, but we do have tests. Number one, we have a test that can give you results in 15 minutes, and it's a nose swab. People are doing it in drive-thrus, and you don't even have to get out of your car. And number two, we have double the amount of tests of any other nation. We have tested almost 3 million Americans at this point. So we've done superb with testing, and tests increase every day. So we're doing fine with testing. But my second point is that...
Hold on, we're not doing fine with testing. We test less than 1/20th of 1% of the U.S. population a day. Here we are like 3 months into this, and we still have only tested 6/7 of 1% of the population. Had we done that early and gotten a handle on it, we might have been able to get away with less testing. Like Japan, now their daily deaths are going up. Today Japan had 15 deaths, which is the most they've ever had by far. Yesterday was their second most deaths, which is 9 deaths. But 15 deaths is less than 1% of the number of deaths we have every day. So Japan has been able to probably with decent testing, pinpoint testing, they've been able to hold it down. Now, if it starts getting out of hand in Japan, they may have to do other shit. But right now, they don't have a serious problem. We've got a serious problem because we have probably more than 1 million people infected. And Sweden, I've got an article here, so a top doctor at a large Swedish hospital told Time magazine that this lackadaisical approach will probably end in a historical massacre. So it might not be bad yet, and it may not get bad. Now, some lucky shit may happen, but it's too early to tell whether Sweden is going to dodge some kind of bullet for not locking shit down. I don't know that much about Sweden, but I believe Florida is going to get hammered because they took too long to put any limits on people. And as far as testing goes, yeah, we may have tested more people than any place else, but we did it too late. If we'd done it early and caught most of the people who have the shit, then we could have caught them. We could have done contact tracing, found the people they talked to, tested them, and held it down. But we didn't. We didn't do enough early testing. In the early weeks of testing, the CDC, only like 3 weeks into it, the CDC managed to test 77 people in the whole fucking country in 1 week. And so all these people who have the shit got loose, and now we have more than 500,000 people out there who have it and haven't been tested, only some of whom think they have it. We have 560,000 confirmed cases and at least that many unconfirmed cases. So 500,000 typhoid Marys out there giving it to other people, not knowing they have it.
Okay, so your argument against about how badly Sweden and Japan are doing actually made my argument. So yes, Rick, clearly Japan and Sweden are doing just fine. Just as you said, if they have had 15 deaths in Japan, they should not be shutting down an entire nation with 100 million people in it. You're right, Rick. Thank you for making my argument. As far as the one doctor that left-wing Time magazine interviewed in Sweden who says it's really going to be bad, well, there are plenty of Swedish doctors, including the Swedish government and the Swedish Ministry of Health, that say that they're going to be just fine. And I tend to, so I agree with them. Now, the last point I'd like to make, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
All right, look, Japan
I'm still talking, Rick.
Hold on, you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
All right, Japan has a death rate of 1 person in a million from this shit. It has a death rate of 1/89th of Sweden's death rate. It has a death rate of 1/17th of California's death rate, and we're doing really well with, staying home. Now, with a death rate of 1 in a million, and I would assume that Japan is tracking and testing. Let's see their fucking testing rate. Hold on. Test. Japan, I mean, they haven't done that many tests, but they've done 77,000 tests. I assume that they think they've caught pretty much everybody who has it, or at least enough of them that they don't have a gazillion people running around with it infecting other people. If that starts to happen, I would think that they would exert more concerted efforts to have people social distance. I mean, Japan is a pretty fastidious country anyway. Hold on one sec. You see people in Japan wearing masks on the street anyhow, before this shit happened. They are a germophobic country in general. So they've done a good job with this, and maybe because of their average daily behavior and because they pinpointed the cases, they have a handle on it, where we don't and where Sweden may not.
Well, my point is that at this point, everyone in America knows that they have to wash their hands, not go out if they're sick. There are certain circumstances where they could wear a mask, not visit grandma. There are 100 things that we could do to be fastidious if we choose to be. As far as the hundreds of thousands of typhoid Marys out there, I'd like to quote the governor of South Dakota, who I just heard before we got on, and she said, you don't really stop the virus from spreading. What you do is you spread out the spreading so that the hospitals aren't overwhelmed, so that we can get testing and possible vaccines and cures and better equipment, better preparedness. Because what happens is once the virus gets out, it just goes out and continues to spread among any population until eventually it either dies out because of the change of weather, dies out because of herd immunity, that is, that enough people get it and have antibodies to it, that it just can't keep spreading to people, or we as a nation become prepared for it. And I have to say, Rick, I think we are extremely well prepared now. Regardless, you can argue that we weren't prepared, but now we are. So my point is that we can open up the country. And the most important thing I'm going to say again, which I've been saying now since early March, mid-March, is that the cure is known. Hydroxychloroquine does, since Rick and I last spoke, they've now tested it on thousands and thousands of more people, and it is working. I'll cite an example. The foremost virologist in the world, Didier Rouault, since we last spoke, has tested it on 1,060 people. And of that 1,060 people, only 7 people died. The other 1,053 survived. And so I will take those odds. I will take the odds that I'm not going to get it. In the state of California, for example, it's many thousands to one that I'll become infected. And now that hydroxychloroquine has been spread to all the hospitals and pharmacies in the country, I will take the 0.7% chance that I'll die even if I get it. So there's a 99.3% chance that you'll survive if you get it. And it's thousands to one that you'll get it, period. So I'll take those odds, Rick. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Okay, here's an article from Science Magazine, a very legit magazine from 3 days ago on Didier Rouault. The popular faith in hydroxychloroquine stands in stark contrast to the weakness of the data. Several studies of its efficacy have delivered an equivocal or negative verdict, and it can have significant side effects, including heart arrhythmias. Rouault's positive studies have been widely criticized for their limitations and methodological issues. The first study included only 14 patients, and Rouault chose who received the drug or a placebo, a no-no in clinical research. The International Society of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy has distanced itself from the paper. The second study, published as a preprint without peer review, didn't have a control group at all. So whatever Rouault's doing is still not, I mean, here's what I think is going to happen. There are lots of antivirals. There are lots of, there are lots of antivirals. There are a lot, and antibiotics. And antibiotics tend to not work against viruses because they have a whole different means of working. But there are a whole bunch of things that kind of work against viruses. They don't hit home runs, but they maybe hit doubles. They may be, some of the best antivirals might produce significant results in 60% of the people treated. And I kind of think that when the evidence is in for chloroquine, it'll be one of those. It'll be pretty good against corona, but it won't be a miracle thing that stops it 80, 90, 95% of the time. It'll be something that you use when, where the patient's life is threatened, and the risk of having the life-threatening side effects is judged by the doctor to be less than the risk of dying from corona. It's going to be one helpful drug in a whole bunch of helpful drugs. It's not going to be, based on the studies I've seen, which are still early, it's not going to be a miracle thing that's going to be head and shoulders above everything else.